The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. Humans are distinguished by their ability to interpret the various phenomena that occur in their surrounding environment and transform them into useful information. This ability allowed humans to find the scientific method and to form a philosophy about the nature of existence and innovate complex mathematical models. Despite the fact that humans have this talent, this doesn't necessarily mean that they have the ability to interpret or understand everything facing them in the world. Humans usually tend to be narrow-minded in the beliefs they make about the world around them. Once people have an idea of how the world works, they tend to hold on to it. But because human knowledge is constantly evolving and expanding, this dogmatic approach to understand the world may not be logical. For example, 200 years ago, doctors and scientists were assured of their knowledge of medicine, but their knowledge and understanding of medicine at that time may seem ridiculous today. The fact that humans hold on to their basic beliefs and ideas they believe in may make them ignorant of the concepts that lie outside the paradigms they previously formed. This type of dogmatic thinking may show unfamiliar events that happen to humans as if they are big surprises. Sometimes we're surprised by events, not because they are random or out of the ordinary or logic, but because our view is very narrow. These surprises are known as black swan events, which can lead us to fundamentally rethink our worldview. For example, before anyone saw a black swan, people assumed that all swans were white. Because of this, all their images and perceptions were about white swans, which meant that white was an essential part of the swan. Therefore, when they first discovered a black swan, this basically transformed their understanding of what swans might be. The concept of black swans may apply to various aspects of life. Bit to remember: black swan events are events that are believed to lie out of the ordinary or possible. But when they do occur, they change people's understanding of some of their previous beliefs in life. The impact of black swan events may vary according to the nature of people. It's determined by your access to relevant information. The more information you have, the less likely you're affected by the events of the black swan. And the more ignorant you are, the more vulnerable you are to being shocked by these events. Suppose a person named George recently started to follow up the sport of horse racing. On his first visit to the racetrack, George liked a horse called Rocket. George found out that Rocket had a record full of victories, led by a proficient horseman, and it had no real rival in that race. George thought that Rocket was the best choice to bet on, so he bet a large amount of money on the winning of the horse Rocket. Upon firing the starting pistol, Rocket didn't leave the starting gate, but remained standing in his place until all the horses reached the finish line. According to the information George collected, what horse Rocket did was one of the events of the black swan. But in turn, it may be a predictable event for a number of people who have more information and are more related to the events of that particular race. For example, the owner of the horse Rocket knew that it had been subjected to hard training in the days before the race, so the owner of the horse didn't bet on his own horse, in anticipation that it might oppose the horseman and refuse to compete with other horses. Although the amount of additional information the owner of the horse had might be insignificant, but it prevented him from falling into the trap of the black swan event. The impact of black swan events can greatly vary as well, as instead of affecting only individuals, entire societies can fall victims to the black swan events. When this happens, the black swan events can change the way the world is understood in many fields, such as philosophy, medicine, and physics. For example, when Copernicus suggested that Earth was not the center of the universe, there were enormous consequences that affected him, his society, and the whole world. Copernicus' discovery was a blatant challenge to the authority of the ruling Catholic Church, as well as to the historical authority of the Church's teachings and interpretations of the Bible. In the end, Copernicus' discovery was a new beginning for establishing new understanding and new beliefs in all European societies. Bit to remember: the impact of black swan events varies according to the diversity of people and societies and may result from ignorance of a small amount of information. Humans often believe that the past is a good indication of what the future may bring, so they tend to create expectations based on what they know from the past. In fact, this belief may make us fallible because there are many unknown factors that can conflict with our vision and our understanding of the past events. For example, imagine you are a turkey living in a farm. Over the years, the farmer has been feeding you and sheltering you in a cozy barn from the cold of winter. And in the summer, he allows you to go freely around the farm. If you use the past as an indication of what will happen to you in the future, you won't find a compelling reason to believe that tomorrow will have something different for you. But unfortunately, tomorrow is the Thanksgiving Day, when the farmer comes to cut off your head, fill you with spices, put you in the oven, and eat you at dinner with his family. The belief that we could predict the future based on our knowledge of the past is a fallacy involving serious consequences. There is also a similar and common fallacy in humans, which is rooting or affirmation. When humans embrace a particular belief in any aspects of life, they often search only for evidences that confirm those beliefs, to the point that they ignore any evidence that contradicts these evidences. When we face information that contradicts what we already believe, we don't tend to accept it or analyze it impartially, but rather we look for sources that undermine and deny this information. For example, if you strongly believe that global warming and climate change is only a conspiracy or a myth, then you see a documentary on scientific evidences about climate change, you will likely get angry and you will rush to find sources refuting this documentary. And if you then search the internet for information about climate change, your search terms are likely to be climate change hoax rather than evidence of climate change. Bit to remember: past events may give us false indications to predict the future. We also tend to establish the origins of our belief in certain ideas with evidences that are appropriate to our beliefs. Let's go back to the time of nearly 90 years ago, and specifically to the year 1928. Suppose you're an investor in the stock market and you decided to start your investments in buying shares in the American market. Before taking this step, like any keen investor, you studied the statistics of the American stock market in the past 8 years, from 1920 to 1928, which is 1 year before the largest stock market crash in the history of the United States that occurred in 1929. While studying the stock market before going into the US market, you may have noticed some small lows and highs. But in general, you may have also noticed an upward trend of the market. With your belief that this upward trend will continue, you determine to invest your savings in the US stock market. The next day, and despite your detailed analysis, the market collapses and you lose all what you have saved. This scenario brings us back to the principle of ignorance of information that may be very little but very important. If you had studied the market just over 8 years ago, you would have noticed many bubble highs that were followed by great crashes throughout history. Consequently, when we focus only on the information we know, we open the door to great dangers that we didn't pay attention to it. On the other hand, if we can at least determine what we don't know, we can reduce the risk significantly. You may have heard the phrase, knowledge is power. However, the knowledge we have may often constrain our understanding of many events or expectations. In fact, by focusing only on what you know, you limit your awareness of all possible outcomes of a particular event and create fertile ground for the emergence of the black swan events. Bit to remember: Being aware that you're ignorant of some data and information may help you assess risks before making any decision. Thanks for watching. Please follow our social media accounts. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also comment below and share your thoughts on our book summary for this week.